in studio with me, Mr. Ebu Richardson, and we're going to have this conversation. Sir, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here and to see the magic that you guys leave from your small corners.
Right. Thank you very much for accepting to be here. We're grateful. Right. Now, I want to start, of course, before you begin to look into a particular quarter. You are a business person, and so you probably understand it better than myself. But before you get into a second quarter, you probably want to look at what you've done in the previous quarter. So you evaluate the past, and then you project into the future. Now, quarter one is behind us. What are some of the key performance indicators businesses should be analyzing at this point?
Okay, all right. That's a good one. And maybe to set a bit of context, if you allow me, I'll speak a little bit about marketing, and then before I come to sort of the whole KPI scene. Okay.
We're going to get into marketing.
We're going to get into that.
Yes,
I just wanted to set some context.
Right,
but anyway, we can.
Okay,
so the reason I wanted to set the context is because more often than not, a lot of people think that marketing is like advertisement and publicity, right? Whereas marketing is actually synonymous with strategy. Okay. Marketing is understanding the people you say you are building some product or service for, understanding them, what they want, positioning yourself to be able to create that value with them, and then capturing that value, as in making the money coming from that. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's actually quite a broad endeavor. Okay. The publicity or doing advertisement or radio and TV is just a small element of that. You have to position yourself. You have to, first of all, understand the market, position yourself within the market before you can even say, now I'm going to go and advertise and do whatever else. Okay. So I think that's an important context.
Maybe we should stay there for a few minutes. When you talk about positioning yourself, what do you mean?
Okay, so positioning yourself is multifaceted. One element of it is, how do you present yourself to the market, right? If you're a watch seller or a bakery, you bake bread. How do you position your wache or your bakery to the market? Because there are other bakers, there are other wache sellers, right? What do you want to be known for? What is your positioning in that market? You want to be known as the one that gives the best meat, or the ones whose shito is the hottest, or how do you want to position yourself so that you are known in the market as the one that does this? Okay, and this that you do should be something that the market wants. That's where they will be prepared to part with their hard-earned cash for the service that you're providing. So that's positioning. From positioning, then the whole publicity and advertisement comes. Because now you want to tell everybody that, hey, I'm the wache seller that gives you the hottest shito in town. Okay. That's how that whole positioning element comes in. And it's very important, because once you're able to do that, then you can basically work on creating the value in the marketplace, which you can then capture as a result.
Right. So that means that positioning has got to do with research, really, isn't it?
Well, there's an element of research there. It has to do more with understanding. You need to understand the market. You need to understand what do people want, right? If you go to East Africa, for instance, I spent a couple of years in Kenya, working in Kenya.
Right.
One thing you realize is that the way we love our pepper, shito and salt over here, it's different over there. Right? Now, imagine you are here, you do wache, and you do the pepper really hot. And you think that's the way wache and pepper should be done. And then you move to Kenya, and you go and do that same wache. Nobody will buy it.
Right.
Because that is not their taste. They are not used to that. They're not looking for that. So it's about understanding. Once you understand that this is what this group of people that I want to sell to, this is what they want, then you can position yourself as the offerer of that thing that they want. Yeah? Right. And that's what marketing is really about.
Right. Okay? Right. So is it just about one single thing that you're trying to put out there, or can your positioning be in several aspects? Because, for instance, you talk about the wache. So the wache per se, you mentioned shito. Can it be beyond just shito? Maybe your shito and your wile, or maybe something that you do that is very unique.
Absolutely.
Can it be multiple things?
No, it can't be multiple things. It can be. And a lot of companies try to create that multiplicity. And the reason they try to do that is because multiplicity is more difficult to imitate or to copy. Okay. If you only your what we call unique value proposition is only on the shito, then maybe somebody else can also try and imitate or copy that quality of shito. But if your unique value proposition is on a few different things, it makes it harder for that person to copy all of them at the same time. Okay, so the really standout organizations try to achieve that multiplicity. However, I must say that it's difficult to achieve, right? Because it requires, heavy investment to be able to create that unique value proposition or unique selling point across different elements. Larger, multinational organizations tend to try and achieve it, and some of them do. But more often than not, organizations want to be at least known for one thing that they can lay claim to say, this is me. So you might have a number of different players in any industry. It could be fintech, it could be telecoms, it could be banking, for instance, right? The whole idea is, if you take the banks, one of them may want to be known as the one that offers you the best interest rates.
Right.
One of them may want to be offered position themselves as the one that offers you the most variety of products. One of them may want to, tell you that they have the most venues, locations, outlets. Yeah. And all of that, each of that, is a strength that they would each want to leverage. The challenge then is, how do they position themselves as such in order to draw the market attention so that they can have the right traction that they want?
I see. Can we look at a brand like KFC? I think it's very relatable. Can you speak to that? Maybe you can touch on that and what they are doing.
Okay. So the brands like KFC, Burger King, McDonald's, what they try to do is create a standardization. Okay. Standardization then brings a very powerful element of efficiency. Okay. One of the things I'll come to KFC because you mentioned that, but one of the things I love about McDonald's, right, is that you can go to a McDonald's in Madrid or Barcelona. You can go to one in Manchester or London. You can go to one in Washington, D.C. or New York City. And the taste of the burgers is almost identical, except for the particular nuances. Sometimes when they move into a market, they look at the taste of that market and they add some couple of extras that are designed to suit the particular taste of the market.
Like the Ghana, Wachi, Kenya thing.
Correct. Okay. Right. But they are standard offerings. Mac chicken sandwich, this, Big Mac, they are all the same wherever you go.
Right.
So what that does, it means you can have a very efficient supply chain.
Okay.
The production line and the supply chain is one. And it supplies everybody the same thing, do the same thing. And when Kwesi Mensah comes home from London to come and visit Ghana and there's a McDonald's, he knows that if he goes there, what he's used to is what he will get. Those efficiencies is what creates huge value for those type of companies. KFC is also similar. If you look at the way they do their chicken, they say the Colonel has the secret recipe of herbs and spices. And all that's happening there is they've come up with that formula. And they say, we'll stick to this formula. It works. And we'll stick to it the world over. So when you go, theoretically to the KFC in East Legon here, and you take the chicken, and you go to one in Paris, they should be very, very similar in terms of taste and experience and all that. And that's what essentially, they've mastered. And in doing that, they are creating such efficiency, because efficiency means you are operationally sound. You are operationally, reasonably excellent. And that creates savings.
Okay.
Savings that can then either, go directly to your bottom line as a company, or savings which you can invest some into research on how to do additional things, or savings indeed that you can pass on to the customer to make the comparative product elsewhere in any market look so unreasonable that people will still rush to you. Okay. So that's how, the whole position, and they market it as such, So if you look at their marketing, it's all geared around that, the taste, the Colonel's recipe, it's universal. That's how they do it.
And that's a big problem for a lot of companies in Ghana. Maybe not companies, maybe food vendors and what have you. Because you go there on a Monday and it has a particular taste. On Tuesday is a different taste.
Yes.
How can they do that?
So I think that challenge is a universal cultural one. Okay. And this is my personal opinion.
Okay. Right.
I believe that as a people, we are more nuanced. We are more socially and emotionally driven than functionally on sort of time, cost, etc. Of course, over time, over the decades, as we've become more exposed to the global trends, we are sort of adjusting. But traditionally, being exactly on time to the minute was not our thing. Being, everything, if I may use the parlance, pep was not our thing.
Right.
We like to feel our way into it. So you are making that jollof, you feel your way into how you add the spices and stuff. Whereas in other jurisdictions, in other cultures, they are more precise. If it's the same amount of spice that you add, it was the same amount. They'll tell you 2 tablespoons. We are not doing 2 tabltablespoons. We are adding it and tasting it and seeing exactly. So that creates a kind of a lack of standardization and a lack of uniformity. Okay, and culturally we are not attuned to that,
and that's a problem.
It's a challenge, especially from the perspective of the globalized economy. If we were just in our own little space and we could do what we like and it wouldn't affect anything, probably we can do anything the way we want to do it. But we are in a globalized economy. We are competing, whether we like it or not, with everyone else. And therefore, if you are that inefficient because of cultural nuances and cultural norms, then it can affect your output, your produce. And therefore, you'll find that you are not as economically competitive as perhaps you could be. So these are some of the things that we would have to look at if we're looking on a global scale.
Right, we're going to come to marketing and branding very soon. Maybe when we get into the conversation, really. But maybe you just tuned in. This is Business Breakfast on Z. We are about 18 minutes to the top of the hour, and this morning we're talking about Q2 business strategy, how you can plan, how you can market, and how you can grow your business in this particular period. And I have said that the second quarter, of course, is a pivotal time for business, a moment where you reflect on the past 3 months. You also fine-tune your strategies and also set the course for sustainable growth within the year. If you want to join the conversation, please feel free. 0544-321-019 is our WhatsApp number, 0544-321-019. Or you can call me on 030-3956-641, 030-3956-641. And I'll do well to answer, and then we hear you. If you have a question, you have a comment, feel free to call us. And you can also engage us on our social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, and X at ZFMGH. Instagram, Facebook, and X at ZFMGH. And we're talking this morning to Mr. Ebo Richardson, and he's helping us understand a few things. Well, now let's get into the conversation proper.
Sure.
The person, maybe you tuned in, you just gotten some free marketing lessons right there. You came to listen to how you can position your business. So we're getting into that. We're getting into that right away. So yeah. So my question really was, now
KPIs.
Exactly. What are the key performance indicators to be
Okay,
analyzing?
so the reason I started with that context setting in the marketing thing is because a lot of KPIs are drawn from there.
Okay.
Ultimately, you are a business. Yeah. Of course, there are not-for-profit endeavors, enterprises, NGOs and charities and whatever what you may have. But you are in business to make money.
Perfect.
Yeah. The kind of the proper term that we use, in those spheres is we say we're creating value. Yeah. And whether it's shareholder value or stakeholder value, you are in business to make money. And therefore, some of your KPIs have to be KPIs that are directly connected to telling you whether that endeavor is going well or not. So if you want to know the good KPIs that you should have, telling you the story of Q1, some of the first ones should be financial performance.
Right.
Okay, because you are in it to make money. So how much money did you make? Right? How much in total did you make? What should be due for what covers your costs, for instance? Because let's say you made 1,000 CDs, but your cost, you spent money to make that 1,000 CDs. You paid staff, you bought raw materials, you did this, you did that. So that cost, how much was it? And how much is left over after you apply your costs into the income or the revenue that you made? That's standard. If there's a business that isn't looking at that, then they're not a business, right? So, I don't think we need to tell anybody out there, but since we are trying to do an exhaustive exercise, we start from there.
Right.
Then the next sort of set of KPIs you're looking at has to do with maybe the market. Okay. where are you positioned within the market? How much of your products make up the totality of the market space, right? What we call market share.
Right.
Okay. So if you're, I don't know, EcoBank or GCB Bank, the number of customers that you have and the take-up of your products that those customers take up is a certain percentage, a certain proportion of the totality of the market. Yeah. How much is that? And have you moved? Have you increased it or has it decreased? Because if you've increased it, then indicatively you're going to be performing better.
Okay.
You may not have made a lot of money now, but if more people than before are taking off your products, eventually the incomes will flow through. So market share becomes a very, very important indicator of your performance. Then the next set probably goes into the area of product itself, right?
Okay.
You're a baker. You bake cakes. You bake bread of different types, right? Which one do people like? Right? And do people in different jurisdictions prefer different ones? So, for instance, you ship your cakes and bread and whatever, from Committee 25 in Tema all the way through to Fankor Barrier, all the way through to Dansoman, right? Maybe Dansoman people like the cakes. Maybe the Fankor people, area people, like a particular type of bread. Maybe Committee 25 people like brown bread, right? You need to have those details, because then what it does is it enables you to, first of all, determine whether a product is good or not.
Yeah.
If people are not buying the product, why waste money doing more of it? It's just a waste of money.
Yeah.
And if people are buying more of it, should you consider doing more of it, investing more to do more? So you will not be able to have all of this insights and make the right decisions if you don't have those product level KPIs.
Right.
Okay. I subscribe to the school of Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker, for those people that don't know, is widely credited as the father of modern management theory. He was a Harvard Business School professor, and he came up with he wrote a number of books and came up with a lot of concepts, that we've adopted into the usual sort of, strategic management, academics.
Yeah.
And he said, and I paraphrase, you cannot improve what you don't measure. You cannot improve what you don't measure.
Right.
So that's why measurement, metrics, KPIs are so important, because ultimately you're looking to improve. Yeah. How do you know which products are better for the market? You have to measure. You have to know which ones are doing well and which ones are not. If you're a telecoms company, you have different types of value-added services. Some of them will sell more than others. Caller ringtones may be big and really happening. Others may not. Why should you invest more money in those ones that are not? Over time, too, caller ringtones people might move off it and go to something else.
Yeah.
If they do, should you continue to invest money in it? Maybe you should do something else. Those insights are very, very important. So these are some of the metrics that you should know at all times, not just for any particular quarter, at all times. And then there are seasonal metrics. Those are the ones that matter for particular times. So, for instance, Q1. What are the seasonal or socioeconomic events that have characterized quarter one? Quarter one is the start of the year. Maybe people don't traditionally do a lot of investments. There's also been the change of government. All of that has implications. How have you factored those implications into your metrics, into your measurements? Do you have historical seasonal data to let you know that in quarter one, we generally tend to make only 15% of our annual revenues, whereas quarter two is where we go to 40%. If you don't have those seasonal informations available, those insights, when you do certain performance or chalk certain performance in quarter one, you may think you've underperformed, or you may think that all hell has broken loose, and it could just be a seasonal thing. So those are also very, very important information, insights to be empowered with. Yeah.
So you talked about the revenue bit of it, whether you're making the money. You talk about the market share. You talk about the product that you're offering, whether people are really patronizing, and also the seasonal shift. And all of it. What are some of the mistakes that people make or businesses make when they are reviewing their performance?
Okay. So before we address that question, there is one additional area of measurement that I think is so important. It would be remiss of us not to include it, which is the customer insights, customer satisfaction, that sort of stuff. Right.
Very important.
Very, very important that you know what your customers think, any insights that you can garner from them, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So that's another area.
Right.
We have different metrics we use. Customer satisfaction index, net promoter score, and things like that we use to get a sense of where the customer is. Okay. Now, in terms of mistakes, it depends. I mean, you can't legislate for all companies, big and small, in all industries, because we are all executing slightly different strategies, and the mistakes we make may also be slightly different and peculiar to our style, our industry, or whatever. But I think that some of the ones that tend to cut across generally all industries include things like, first of all, biting off too much than you can chew. Okay, you know that thing that most of us do where we are approaching a new year and we're doing New Year's resolutions, and we go and we say, 30 New Year's resolutions. I want to do this and I'll do that and I'll do this, etc. And then by the time we get to halfway through the year, realize that we've maybe one. We'll be lucky to have done one.
They'll wait for the next year too.
Exactly. Sometimes organizations can fall into that trap as well, where they try to do too much. Okay, and that's one of the mistakes that I've seen. So it's important to be clear on the strategy and to have very, smart objectives within particular periods to make sure that those things, not only are they achievable, but they're also communicatable, if I can, create that word. Because ultimately, execution of strategy is done through people. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you are not able to effectively articulate that strategy to those people so that they understand, can assimilate it, can imbibe it, and execute it, work on it, then people will just be around, they'll be doing stuff, but they're not really executing that strategy. So that's kind of one of the challenges. The other one is the absence of effective metrics in themselves. Like I said, you can only improve what you measure, per Peter Drucker. So if the metrics that you've created, the KPIs, either you don't have them, or you have them but they're a little bit scanty, or you have them, they're quite comprehensive, but they are not telling you the things that you need to know in order to know how well you're performing, but also make sound business decisions, because you may have to do some adjustments. If that is an issue, then obviously it's gonna impact the performance, and that will be some of the challenges that you'll see. So ultimately, these are some of the challenges that we see when it comes to execute strategy. And then a third one I will throw in is that ineffectual understanding of the market. Okay, and this is a very powerful one, because the market is probably a function of two fundamental forces, and it's a socioeconomic force.
Right.
The sort of national or jurisdictional economic drivers.
Okay.
How well is the economy doing? What are the things that are happening? What are interest rates, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then the preferences and tastes and demands of the consumers. Those are two very powerful forces. So those two coming together creates a kind of a socioeconomic terrain or landscape that you as a business have to perform well in. And if you misread it, then the outcomes are not gonna be the right outcomes. So for instance, if some people project that, we're going to get a new government, so by second quarter, everything will be booming, and things are not booming, they would have made projections. They would have made sales forecasts based on an economic boom that doesn't necessarily materialize. And that will be a problem. So those are, I would say, kind of the key things that sometimes we get wrong in our execution of strategy.
Right. And I know the planning bit of the whole thing also comes in, doesn't it?
Oh, correct. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, planning is a big factor, which is where the whole strategy conversation is, because strategy has two sides. It is the formulation, which is the planning side, and the execution. Formulation is saying that, okay, we want to sell 1,000 TVs in 2025. That's our, we want to sell 1,000 TVs. And the way that we're going to do it is to build our TVs on time and then ship them to the big outlets in town. The Curry, I'm saying Curry's in the UK. These Samsung and whatever,
right.
these shops that we have, right? And ship them there in time and market them, and then we'll sell them. And that is your plan. Okay. And then you have to execute the plan. You have to make it real, because it being on paper or being nice on a TV screen or at a board somewhere is nothing. Ideas are to a penny.
Right.
It's actually making sure that there are people who are going to design, build the TVs on time, making sure that there's couriers who are going to sign contracts with the outlets and then carry the stuff to the outlets on time. And then, you also doing marketing on TV to let people know, and on radio to let people know that there are 1,000 TVs in the shops, that are going for the best value, go and buy.
Right.
That execution is critical. So the planning aspect is important, because the planning is what factors in the inputs, critical inputs. What do consumers want? What is the market like? Do people have a lot of disposable income? Would they want to buy, such devices? How can we convince them that these devices will somehow positively impact their lives? That's the elements that go into the planning. And then you formulate that strategy. And once you formulate the strategy, you have to, at that point in time, decide the metrics, the KPIs, because you said that you want to sell 1,000 TVs. How would you know if you're selling the 1,000 TVs? How would you know how much each TV was being sold for?
Yeah.
Those are metrics that you have to track to ensure that you are on track.
I like that, right?
Yeah.
You need to track that to make sure you're on track.
Correct.
Right. Now, let's talk about, there are times where businesses underperform and they don't know how to bounce back. Let's say there's somebody listening to us this morning and they are saying that I underperformed. I estimated too much, and I haven't met my KPIs for the previous quarter. What do I do to bounce back in quarter two? What would you say?
Okay, so I think that's a fairly complex and nuanced question, because what you do as a response to, in quotes, the failing or the failure should be based on the learnings from what caused that failure. Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. There's no silver bullet. If what caused the failure, which is why it's important to have the metrics, the KPIs, etc. It's important to have the understanding of the market, the socioeconomic environment. It's important to have all of those, because that's what will tell you or give you an indication as to what went wrong.
Right.
Okay? And depending on what went wrong is what you do to apply the fix. So for instance, if, as we were saying earlier on, if you overestimated grossly because you thought, the buoyancy of a government change will bring XYZ, or you didn't look at the seasonal factors in previous years and you just went boom, then it's not necessarily that you failed in that sense. It's just that it's a misstep, it's a miscalculation. So why don't you recalculate? In that instance, you may forecast based on more tangible or more real factors that you've become aware of. Okay?
Right.
So in that instance, it's a relatively straightforward exercise. But it could actually be worse than that. It could be a situation where you gambled that because Ghanaians have shown a liking for KFC and Ghanaians have shown a liking for Burger King, that you're going to bring Nando's, for instance. So you are gambling. You haven't necessarily done, enough tests to see if Ghanaians
really
would like that flavor of Nando's, but
right.
you are looking at certain trends and you are making a move. If you did that move and you found that bam, Ghanaians they just didn't take to it. Okay. in those instances, you have to make some tough decisions, right? Either you pivot, and by pivot it means basically redirect that investment into something else, some other endeavor that you believe, have done some enough research to know that Ghanaians will go for, or you say, okay, let's do some actual research. Let's do some focus groups. Let's do some, market research to understand that maybe if we change the flavor small, add some small pepper, Ghanaians go like them.
Right.
Okay. And in that instance, that is the strategy that you will apply. And if you apply that strategy and you can reintroduce a revamped product into the marketplace and see how, the takeoff will be. Yeah. So it really does depend on what went wrong to determine what steps you need to do, what remedial steps will help you bounce back.
Right.
If it's just a case of, certain things like, for instance, competition, right? Sometimes you're in a space where, competition becomes rife.
Yeah.
I've seen or I've heard of situations and seen some situations where, some giant player comes and set up a much more efficient setup close to where you've been doing your stuff.
Yeah.
I know of bakeries, our own local corner bakeries who are having to compete with maybe factories.
Yeah.
Maybe foreign entities come and set up factories, and they are so efficient. They churn out so much bread within a couple of hours, and it's all nice and well packaged and whatever. So in that instance, you have to ask yourself, how do we compete with this? How do we handle this? Should we simply just redirect take our products elsewhere because we can no longer compete in this space? The foreign entities are big.
Also,
they have money.
it gets to that point.
Oh, yes.
Where you have to.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, sometimes not doing anything means eventually going out of business, right? So you have to think wide and thorough about how you can reposition yourself. Sometimes it's about a jurisdictional change. There are times where retailers move shops, not because, physical shops, not because they want to stop doing business, but because they realize that another location would better serve the selling of their products, right? Some in Western world and so I would say more developed parts of the world, telecoms operators can sell information, data, for huge amounts of money to retail outlets. For about location, because what they do is they track all our movements on the phone, and they say that there's a lot of traffic here.
Yeah.
If you put a shop here, you'll sell a lot of your products, and the retail outlets will buy that information because that then lets them know that here's a better place to locate your shop than this other place. So all of those are factors that you'd have to look at depending on the particular peculiar challenges that you are facing.
Well, exactly 2 minutes after 9, and this is a business breakfast on Z 101.9 FM with me, Trebi Hammond. This morning, I'm having a conversation with Mr. I don't know why I want to call you doctor. Mr. Ebo Richardson.
It's because of my plenty grade.
Who is a business and a digital transformation consultant. He helps businesses leverage strategy and technology for growth, and he's helping us understand a few things that you need to do as a business to position yourself better to excel or to succeed in this new quarter that we've entered into. If you want to join the conversation on our WhatsApp line on 0544321019, 0544321019, or you can call us on 030 3956641, 030395661. And you can as well engage us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at ZFMGH. We'll do well to pick your calls and also reply your messages. I have joining me over the phone lines now, Dr. Teddy Osei Kwache, and I'm going to turn my attention to him for a few minutes so he can also come in with the financial perspective of things. Now, we've spoken extensively about all the KPIs you need to look out for. Now, we shift our attention to financial perspective. Dr. Teddy Osei, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Ralph, thank you so much. And sorry I couldn't be in the studio, but thanks to technology, I've joined it.
Absolutely.
Ebo, you are doing well too.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Right. Oh, you know yourselves already?
No.
Oh, okay, you just heard. Okay, right. Awesome. All right, Dr. Teddy, let's get into the conversation now. Mr. Ebo Richardson has made us understand a few things in line with the KPIs you need to look out for, some common mistakes to avoid, as well as how you can bounce back as a business if you see that you're going down. Now, I want us to also look at the financial perspective with you. Now, from a financial perspective, what are the key lessons that businesses should take from their quarter one?
Okay. So, thank you so much. As quarter one goes, before you start the business, you would have budgeted, you would have planned what you expect in the year, which you would have broken them into sections in terms of quarters. Now that quarter one has ended, the best thing you have to do is to try and compare your actuals with what you planned,
right,
to see whether there are any variations in your plans and actuals. Now, when you have those variances, those things can inform what you want to do. For instance, if you planned, say, you wanted a revenue of, let's say, 20,000. Now, actually, you had 18,000. All of a sudden, you may think that, oh, I didn't meet my target. No, you don't just take it, yes, you didn't meet your target, but it's possible you go deeper into why this happened. It's possible that the reason for you not meeting the target was beyond your control.
Right.
And if you look at the things that were under your control, you would have realized that you performed better. And for example, as I pick revenue, there are two key things that goes into your revenue. You can look at your selling price and the demand. And so how much you sold it for and the quantity that you provided out there, or the services that you provided out there.
Right.
So it's possible that your selling price, you had to reduce your selling price as expected or as planned, or it's possible you did not meet the demand, and so that's why you didn't meet your revenue. Now, go into details, find out why these things happen. Why did I not meet my selling price target? Yes, maybe the situation called for you to reduce. There was competition, so you had to reduce your selling price. And reducing your selling price alone may have made you cover your other variable costs, and you were even able to make some contribution. That's good. It doesn't mean you didn't perform well. At least you've been able to cover those things that will vary with the things that you do.
Right.
So yours is to go deeper into some of these things. So analyze your variances, go deeper into them, and look at what caused it. Then you can forge forward to make the next quarter a success. So as a business, you have to look at the metrics as Ibu mentioned, especially with regards to your revenue and cost, as I'm coming from the financial aspect, and make headway.
I see. Very interesting. Now, but how can a business tell if they are financially healthy?
If you are financially healthy, it means you are able to meet your spending, both the necessary spending and both the discretionary spending, and you have enough savings also to cover whatever debt that you are able to meet your debt liability. So in a financially healthy environment, that business is able to continue with operations efficiently, and is also able to meet its financial obligations such that it is very cash liquid. So if you are unable to meet your financial obligations, that calls for a concern, because you may end up not meeting, being credit worthy, which when you need financing at some point in time, you may not have access to them. If your business is such that you are unable to meet the demands of your customers just because you are not having enough products, or you are not having the ability to provide the services, that also calls for concern if you think about it, because if you were healthy, you would have had all these things in place to do it. So there are some key important things that you need to look for. Am I able to meet my demands? Am I able to meet my financial obligations? Am I very liquid as and when in terms of contingencies? Do I have any emergency fund around to make sure I can meet the emergency while I am still meeting my normal customers and suppliers?
Wow.
Yeah.
I like how you've broken that down. I think Mr. Ebu Richardson wants to make a point.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to endorse everything that the doc has said.
Right.
It's absolutely spot on. It's all about, your ability to meet all your obligations. That's what, from a financial perspective, that's what will indicate that you are, financially sound and healthy. And I wanted to point, as he ended that, to the financial statements that every proper organization is supposed to have. Particularly, I'm not an accountant, but I know that these are the basis of a lot of the conversations around financial health, viability, etc. Which is apart from your income statement, which is an obvious one, that's profit and loss. Yeah. But the balance sheet and your cash flow statements are also very important. They will tell you everything that the doctor has just alluded to.
Right, Doc. Let me come back to you. What are some of the biggest financial mistakes that businesses make at the start of a new quarter?
Well, most of the time, the mistakes that people make, it's not just an event. It's just something that has been procedural.
Right.
For instance, a business may have been budgeting wrongly. They over-anticipate, and they always try to put in some measures, or they put in some expenses which they have not put them into the different perspectives. For example, there are some expenses that are necessary. Without it, you cannot go on.
Right.
There are some which are discretionary, or what we normally call fixed. Now, most of the time, some businesses will overemphasize on the fixed ones. For example, you don't have your operational items, or you don't have your operational resources, but you are thinking of building a shop, or you are thinking of go and rent an apartment. That is fixed. If you rent the apartment and you can't produce, what happens? You can't be in business.
That's true.
But you can, in this era where we have digitalization and technology advancing, you can even be in your home and have your operational logistics and still be able to be in business without having an office. So the lack of proper planning is one of the things that will always throw people off. And so when you are going to the next quarter, or you are thinking of what to do, you need to make sure you plan well. And again, most businesses do not manage their cash well. And what I mean by that is that they don't track their expenses. Ibo mentioned the income statement, the cash flow statement, the balance sheet. Usually, it's those established businesses that are able to come out with this. But with the entrepreneurs, the small, medium scale, and those informal people, they're unable to do this. But at least, if you can prepare your income statements and your cash flow, you should be able to track your expenses.
Right.
You should be able to track your income. Even if you don't have anybody doing it for you. Nowadays, we have softwares that helps you with that. We have QuickBooks, you have your phone there. Every day, whatever expenditure that you have, just put them in. Some people will write them down. And this helps you to make sure you are planning, or you are managing your cash very well. So basically, I've realized from experience that tracking of expenditure or proper lack of proper planning, as well as ineffective cash management, has been the fundamental challenge of most businesses in the country.
Right. Now you talk about technology, which I know is a space where Mr. Richardson really operates in. Mr. Richardson, are there some softwares you may want to highlight for businesses to look at?
Thank you very much. I wouldn't necessarily want to highlight because I think that would sort of be advertising one against the other, which I'm not here to do. But I wanted to also endorse what the doc said around software, because he's right. The informal sector, informal entrepreneurial sector are not necessarily, they don't necessarily have the resources to be able to afford, the people that are going to do these statements and stuff for you, or even some of the software that make it easy to do, the platforms. But there are tools out there on your phone, on the internet, etc., that can be used. And what I particularly wanted to emphasize, that right here in Ghana, there are, small businesses that have started that actually offer the support service. So beyond just the tool, they actually support you as well to be able to use the tool. Wow. So not only are you then sort of, semi-formalizing your business and putting the data in there, and maybe your sales, it can help you. It can then produce all the reports automatically for you as well, which not only gives you better visibility of your business, but then also enables you to be formalized enough that you can now play with the big boys. You can now go to banks because you have formalized data to be able to say, I need this loan to support my business. So I hardly recommend that sort of thing for the entrepreneurs and the informal businesses out there. One thing I wanted to add to what the doc said around some of these challenges is, we've spoken quite a lot about the marketing side challenges. Doc has brought in the financial side challenges. I think there's also one that is important that we need to factor in, which is the people side challenges. Okay? Ultimately, delivery is through people. Ultimately, and if you don't get the people dimension right, your intention, your ideas, your strategy, everything could struggle as a result. And things like people not being well versed on the strategy, not being well connected, people not being happy. Sometimes, you think you're doing well, but maybe the level that people are at in terms of salary and stuff, they don't feel sufficiently recompensed, and all of that can lead to a kind of a negative energy that can impair your ability to deliver against any strategy. So I think the people side is another area that I would recommend that we look at as leaders and as strategists and as people trying to deliver business outcomes.
Awesome. Very important. When you talk about people, I actually remember some of the things that we've done, and sometimes you have to look at the people and the kind of input that they are bringing. And I didn't think about it, that's something that's a KPI that should be looked at, but you draw my attention to that. Thank you. Yeah. Now, Dr. Teddy, let's talk a bit about budgeting, because you mentioned it earlier. You said that's one of the biggest problems. People don't budget properly. How can small business create a very effective budget that allows them to be able to grow and also maybe remain stable?
All right. So you have to be smart when you are budgeting. And this smartness is in terms of you identifying your costs and revenues, because budgeting is about you planning your revenue and cost. Usually, if you want to budget smart, sometimes you may decide that you will allocate the funds based on the necessities, the discretionary spendings, and your savings and debt. It depends on your organization. Sometimes we advise you can decide that you do 50% of your income towards the necessities when you are planning, so that 30% goes to discretionary ones. Then you use about 20 for savings and payment of debt. Another way you can budget is that you can look at the items in terms of categorizing them into operational, then your marketing, then your financing. So you know how much I am putting into operational as my cost, how much I'm putting into financing, and how much I'm putting into my sales and marketing. And all this, once you put them into perspective, you are able to tell yourself, okay, this is what I'm going to do in the next period. If you don't have the ideas around it, as Ibu mentioned earlier, there are people who are helping small, medium-scale people, the informal sector, to come up with some of these things. It's just nothing so huge. You know, for example, if I'm budgeting for a cost, I provide service.
Yeah.
Literally, when I provide a service, what is the cost of providing the service? Okay, I put it down. What is the anticipated number of service I expect in the month or in the quarter? When I multiply this two variables, I get my budgeted amount of what service that I want to provide, or the cost of service.
Right.
Now, how much do I want to charge per service? If I know the charge per service, I can multiply by the expected number of services that I want to provide. And that gives me the revenue I expect from the service. And so these are the little things. So effectively, it's about you categorizing your costs and revenues and putting them together and coming up with something that can guide you in terms of it. And believe you me, if you are not someone who is able to track your expenses and income, as I mentioned earlier, you can't do this, because you don't even know what are my expenses, what are my income, where are they coming from. So it's important that you always have a robust bookkeeping ability or accounting practice in your firm, so that it can help you in terms of this budgeting process.
Right. Very important. And I know you have been monitoring the markets so far. I believe so. Do you think that from what we have seen in Q1, businesses should cut costs in Q2, or you think this is a time to reinvest into their businesses?
It depends. It depends on what you want to do. Why do I say that? If, for example, if your aim in Q2 is to probably invest in employee or look at employee development, when you are providing services or training and skill enhancements to ensure that productivity of your business is improved. With the current trend going on and what is going on in the market, there is no need cutting down costs, because most of your costs will go into this training, wages, and which is a bit stable now. All right. So, but if, let's say, your idea is to expand into different product lines or look into coming up with different services, then yes, you need to make sure, whilst you are projecting into the different product lines, you make sure you look at the current trends and the way inflation is going, recently interest rates changes that they made, because this has implications on the materials that you are going to use, on the services and operational costs, because mostly the products or the materials may not necessarily come from here. So if the products are being imported, then you need to think about interest rates. You need to think about currency fluctuations in terms of your costs, and make sure you come up with efficient production processes or efficient operational services. The cost cutting is always ideal, but sometimes if you are cutting costs, if you don't take time, you compromise on your quality. And I know Ebo is in this area. Branding is very, very important. You don't lose on your branding.
Yeah.
So if you are cutting down costs just because the market, you think the market is not favorable and compromising quality, in the end, you lose your customers and you lose everything. So it depends on whatever you want to do in the next quarter, and that informs how you're going to go about the strategies that you put in place to come up with a better quarter, leading to a successful year as well.
Right. Now, I'm going to come back to you on when a business should actually reinvest their profits and when they should save, because I think it's a very important conversation to have. Because some people do not know when it is time for them to reinvest and when it is time for them to save. And I'm going to come back to you on that. But I see Mr. Richardson nodding a lot of times. Is there anything you want to add to what he's saying?
No, I think Doc is absolutely spot on, and I was nodding because essentially everything he's saying is I'm in full agreement with it. He mentioned about the brand aspect.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely. I see a brand to be a promise fulfilled. A brand is a lot more than just logos and colors.
Yeah.
It's actually how people perceive you in their mind of what you offer.
Right.
And in order to be able to sustain that, you have to make sure that the necessary effort, the necessary investments go in. If your cost cutting leads to a situation where the tenets, the elements that sustain that brand in the minds of people is reduced or eroded, then ultimately there will be a backlash somewhere along the line. Right. So I think the doc is absolutely right. I also think that just because you've had a not great quarter one is not sufficient basis to say I'm disbanding everything or I'm changing everything. It could just be, a situational, a socioeconomic, or even a seasonal sort of factors. So it's important, as the doc said, to understand what are the key drivers of that and make the necessary adjustments, for the future.
For the future, right. We'll come back on the subject of branding, as I promised earlier, branding and marketing. We're going to come back to that. But let me come back to you, Doc. So tell us, when should a business reinvest profits and when should it save?
Ralph, there is no straitjacket answer to this, if I should put it that way. It all depends on what you want to do, right? Even though reinvestment is so essential in businesses, because if you want to drive growth, if you want to expand operations, if you want to enhance competitiveness, you need to reinvest. And when you do that, it means you allocate funds to invest in new areas like probably new technologies. You may probably be hiring additional people into the business. You may probably look at expanding your marketing efforts and so on. These are things that we look at when we are reinvesting. So the main aim here is to drive business growth, increase the market share, probably stay ahead of competitors and so on in the business. But the key issue is this. No business, if I may put here, saves all its profits.
Okay.
Normally, businesses will try, depending on the strategic orientation and depending on the performance for the period, we decide that we are giving part of the profits to shareholders, or we are giving part of the profits as if I'm the owner, I'm taking part, or I am, then they will reinvest part.
Right.
When we are looking at shareholders, that's what we normally call, they pay you the dividends. So every profit that comes out, part is given to the owners or shareholders, and part is also given to or reinvested. So there is nothing like, okay, this time I'll not reinvest. This time I'm giving all profits away. It all depends, but most of the time organizations have a particular share they give out as the profits to the owners and parts that are reinvested. And it all depends on the strategy. What percentage are you giving out and what percentage are you reinvesting into the business? And what the percentage or the decision of reinvestment and the amount to be considered to reinvest depends on what strategy you want to or what you are aiming at in terms of the reinvestment. As I said, the reinvestment could be with regards to employee development and expanding product lines, expanding your market efforts, investing in technology, and sometimes you want to even scale up operations. And all these comes at a different cost. And depending on the cost, that will determine what percentage to be reinvested and what percentage to be given out. My candid opinion and my candid advice, always reinvest part of your profit because you always want to drive growth.
Right.
You always want to expand your operations. You always want to enhance your competitiveness. And that's what keeps the business thriving. So if there is the need for that, look, if you spend all your profits and you are not expanding, you are not increasing your activities or operations, in the end, you end up spending the profit. And if you don't take time, you even go back to spend your capital that you have invested because you do not come up with new things that will bring about growth in the business. And so it's all about you strategizing well and knowing what amount or what percentage of my income or revenue I'm going to use in reinvestment and what I'm just going to give out to shareholders. At some point, if you are always reinvesting to shareholders and let's say the owners get frustrated because they also want to get returns on their investment. So it's not about reinvestment. So you should always have a policy of those reinvestment and how much you're going to save.
Well, so it largely depends on what is happening with you and what stage you are in, isn't it?
Exactly. And what you want, what is the focus?
Okay.
Sometimes some organizations may decide that this time we are investing so much into capital expenditure. And when we are investing in capital expenditure, it becomes difficult trying to save, actually.
Yeah.
So if that is the focus and all the shareholders and the people involved, all the stakeholders have understood, then the stakeholders have in their mind that, within this particular period, we are not expecting any dividends from our investment because we are reinvesting. Exactly. So it's all about the strategy, the long-term strategy that you have and how you have planned them in terms of the allocation of the funds.
Right, Doc. I'm going to come back to you later in this particular last 26 minutes that we have. But just before I let you go for a few minutes, what are the biggest financial risks businesses should prepare for in this second quarter? Are there any you can speak to?
The economic output globally is still, everybody is bouncing back gradually. So all I would say is that businesses should tread cautiously with what sometimes we think, we are bouncing back and they throw the figures out, like, for instance, in Ghana, currency stabilized, the foreign currency looks a bit stabilized now. If we look at treasury bill rates are going down, they've increased the interest rates and all that.
Yeah.
These things, you may look at it in if you don't take time and you just jump into it, that those things are going to be better, and so let me take those high risks. You are in trouble. So tread cautiously, because all these have knock-on effects on each other. For instance, when treasury bills are coming down like this, people will think that, okay, so it's not important, or we may not be able to get more returns from investing in government or buying government bonds and all those things. So what do? They will now turn their attention to Forex.
Yeah.
So if that aspect is also not regulated well and managed well, our Forex or the currency fluctuations is usually based on demand and supply.
Yeah.
So if the demand for Forex also goes high, definitely rates will go high. And so it has a knock-on effect over there. So it's you just treading cautiously and trying to take one step at a time.
Okay.
Make sure you are abreast with the changing environment. In fact, because if the environment that you are in and the regulatory changes, as well as the market trends and the emerging technologies, if you miss them out and you are not abreast with them, you stand at a risk of losing out in business. So the biggest risk that you can take is to ignore the industry changes, the economic shifts that are coming in, and so on. Otherwise, you miss the point, because at the moment, everybody is treading cautious.
Right.
So we move based on the markets and what the markets are telling us, then we move on. So you should be well abreast with these industrial changes, regulatory changes, and economic shifts that are coming around.
All right. Okay, Doc, thank you very much. I'm going to come back to you later before we end this conversation this morning. We have just a few minutes to go, and I want to talk to Dr. Mr. Ebo Richardson.
Okay. Let me say one thing, then I'll go off and come back.
All right.
I think, Ebo, in your metrics, I'm sure I guess everything was on point, but I was also looking at, because you were in digital space, I wanted to add that your social media presence is also something that you need to monitor.
Right.
It's a metric that you need to look at when you are. So your social media engagement, you have to analyze those metrics, like your website traffic and all those things. It shows your presence and interactions with customer online, because most businesses are now online. So it's one key metrics that I wanted to add on to the metrics that Ebo mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doc. I think that's spot on. Before you go, I just wanted to say that I'll be enrolling for some accounting classes with you. So just,
Okay.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Teddy Kwachi Osei. Well, it's exactly, we have about 11 minutes to go. No, about 60 minutes really to go. And this is Business Breakfast on Z101.9 FM. If you just tuned in, we're talking about how you can win your quarter two. What smart strategies do you need to be able to grow your businesses? And this morning, Dr. Teddy Kwachi Osei has helped us with the financial aspect of things, what you need to do. And he said a lot of things. One of the things that he's speaking extensively about is that don't go ahead of yourself. Look at quarter two, pay attention to quarter one really, and look at the things that went wrong and try to correct them as you go into quarter two. And he says that don't over, the word is not coming, but take your time when you're planning. Take your time when you're looking at the things. Don't just jump the gun. the economic shifts that are happening. There are things that are happening. It looks like things are going well. So don't just jump into it. Still monitor things and then make sure you make the right decisions. I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Ebu Richardson, who is a consultant. He is a business and digital transformation consultant. And this time we're going to talk about branding and marketing. Of course, branding is very essential when it comes to business. But how can businesses refine their brand identity in this particular quarter?
Okay, so I think earlier on the doc made reference to something when he was speaking about budgeting and all those things. He said that it's not an event.
Yeah.
And I'd like to borrow that same sentiment when we talk about, brand building and branding.
Right.
It's not an event, so it's not something you can focus on just for a quarter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a longer term thing. Okay. But if you are specifically looking at how you, maybe sort of reposition or enhance yourself from a brand perspective, then there are a number of important factors that, always need to come to the fore.
Right.
As I said earlier on, a brand is a promise fulfilled. A brand is, how people perceive you.
Yeah.
Okay. If you think of BMW, right? Of course, they have that nice logo they put on their cars, but the logo is just a gateway. It's a representation of something.
Right.
Yeah. Probably, masterful engineering. Okay. If you think about Apple, that apple with the parts sliced off or bitten off or whatever, is a representation. It's a gateway to something much, much more, powerful, which is probably, design and marketing excellence or something like that, right? So they have built that over years, okay, by consistently fulfilling certain promises. When the thing comes, it meets a certain expectation. The next one comes, it meets a certain expectation. Over time, that becomes a brand that we all
right.
Okay, and as organizations, as businesses, that should be our focus also. We should be looking to elicit certain positive emotional connections from our audience, from our markets, from our customers, based on how we have delivered to them. Okay, we are increasingly living in a highly commoditized sort of world where most of the products that we offer are offered in many other places. If you take a bank, savings account, current account, credit card, all of them have.
Yeah.
If you take telecoms, data, calls, all of them have. Even pure water sellers, water, sachet, all of them have it, right? So if everybody has all the same or similar things, how do you ensure that your brand is built and it stands out? Right. And there are a number of important factors. One that I find is very, very powerful, especially in today's day and age, because consumer power is at its height, it's at its peak, right? Yeah. We have so many options. If you misbehave, I just go and do something else, right?
Yeah.
Is experience.
That's true.
Customer experience. It's one of the key ways of differentiating now. And if you can consistently offer, great experience, it enhances your brand positioning. And it's one of the things that I can say can be used over a relatively shorter period of time to enhance brand positioning. I have a young man who works with me at the moment, and we've been discussing how we can bring good experience or better experience to some of the base. And one thing he always says is that he has a particular outlet, a food outlet that he goes to. And he says, anybody that can offer me the similar experience to what this food outlet offers me, I'll stick with them for good. Why? Wow. Because they've personalized it. They know me. Every time I call, they know that it's me calling, and they know the kind of products I like to patronize. Right. They will engage me directly. They will let me know if it's available, what they can do to further enhance it, and they will make sure that it's delivered and it's delivered on time when I need it. Yeah. So for that alone, I'm never going anywhere else. And if in other industries, banking, whatever, if anybody can make me feel that in those industries, they are the ones I will stick to. Okay? So it's to further highlight the fact that, the brand positioning is an emotive thing. It's a connection with the people that make them feel like this is what I like. You are giving me this. I need it. You know, it's food, I need it. It's water, I need it. It's banking services, I need it. But you are giving it to me in such a way that it makes me see you as different from the other people that are offering you know, the same. And all of that is predicated on things that I said earlier, like understanding the market, understanding the customers, the people.
Yeah.
Because once you understand what they want, then you can position yourself to be the one to give them what they want or even need.
Yeah.
Okay, and all of that is absolutely critical. I think that in this market in Ghana, maybe similar markets also, there is a lot of room for organizations, businesses that want to lead through improved experience. Because traditionally we have been okay to accept, you know, a certain just above average sort of services. It's okay, and you know, kind of attitude. And I think the ones that really push to be, you know, excellent in terms of experience will grab significant market share as a result. Okay. What are other factors where, you know, marketing maybe is concerned? There are maybe things like product quality. Okay. You know, how can you enhance your product quality? I think the doc alluded to it when he was speaking over time. He also spoke about pricing strategies. You know, sometimes, you know, Ghanaians are price sensitive. Right? So a lot of the time it makes sense to undercut or come below the benchmark if you can. Okay. But sometimes it also actually, it's meaningful to go up, because sometimes perception equates quality with cost.
Right. Okay.
So I've been privy to conversations, strategic conversations where, you know, people like, oh, if they are charging this, then it can't be that quality.
Yeah, that's true.
So all of that are things that you have to look at. But ultimately, it's about making a conscious decision to, first of all, be clear on your positioning. What do you stand for? What do you represent?
Okay.
That's where it all stands from. The people who have built the BMWs and the Apples and whatever today that we all eulogize, they started with a positioning conversation. What do we want to represent to the market, to the world? And they've built on that over years to achieve that.
Right. I think we started this conversation talking about marketing. Maybe we can just spend some few minutes. We have a few minutes on that. What marketing channels are the most effective right now?
Most effective marketing channels, I think it's a function of the product types as well, and the target market. So earlier on, you know, the doc was talking about social media and all that, and social media is emerging as one of the, you know, the more you know, vibrant marketing channels that there is. Why? Because most of our youth are there. Okay, so if you look at the dynamic, and I think an estimated maybe 57% of our population here in Ghana is 25 or under, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means that the vast majority of the human beings that you would market to are young people. Yeah? And where are they going to take their feed for marketing? It's probably online and social media. Okay, so that becomes a very, you know, important place. And you see even the large banks, you know, big telcos, even almighty MTN, you'll see them, you know, online, you know, doing a lot of that. And there's a reason for that. They know exactly what the numbers are. So you can't discount that, but you can't also discount you know, other forms of media, you know, radio, television, you can't discount. Why? Because there's also a number of, you know, buyers, customers who are more prevalent on some of those other media.
Right.
Okay. The young people give you huge market, but the young people necessarily don't command the biggest value. If you understand what I mean.
I think so.
Okay. The 45-year-old MD spends more than the 22-year-old young, you know, guy or lady, right? So whilst you want to grab the young people because they are the future in terms of, you know, value creation, you don't want to lose the 45 or 50-year-old who can go and buy a Volkswagen and pay cash for it as well.
Yeah.
So it's about balance. And so there's still room for us to do, radio-based marketing. There's still room for us to do, television-based. And then there are other areas where you can, do SMS, or you can, target apps and whatever. So it's a myriad of options. But as an organization, you need to ask yourself, what am I selling?
Okay.
Who is buying? And that person who's buying, what is their preferred medium of engaging? If you can answer those questions, then you can make sure that you have a proper balance. If your primary target is the youth, you may want to spend, 50, 60% of your marketing capital or bucks on that medium, and then cover the others a little less, but still cover them. If your primary target is maybe, MD, CEO, CFOs, you'll be surprised that you may find that they are more open to BNFT and other even newspapers. They might be more in there than on Instagram.
Right.
So depending on your target audience, who you want to reach, and the nature of what you're selling, you make sure that your expenditure is properly balanced across those channels.
Right. We have some 3 minutes to go, and Dr. Teddy is on the phone lines right now. Doc, are you still with me?
Ralph, yeah, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. We're trying to wrap up, and I'd want to take your final thoughts, and then we go. But maybe if you can, if a business is struggling right now, what's the one thing you think they should focus on to turn things around?
Okay. Before I come to that, I think Ibo was talking about branding, and he's just on point. I just want to add that normally when businesses do the branding, then they neglect the people. The people are supposed to uphold that brand. What do I mean by that? You see somebody has built a brand and he has an employee whose customer relation is very poor. And at the end, it destroys everything for the business. I give you a typical example. It just happened yesterday. There is a brand, I don't want to mention the name because it will destroy everything.
Exactly.
But I went there. It's a popular spot food vendor, has its brand. So anytime I want that particular food, that is where I go. Yesterday, I went for my normal, and in fact, the service there, I went to a particular brand. It was that poor. And to add, look, there was something going on. Probably they had to restock the place, but they were not telling anybody, and they were just needing to close everything, and they were just loitering around, talking to themselves. Nobody knows what's going on. They just sit there waiting for that. Then to cap it, we came in, and this customer, this server was so rude because we were trying to inquire why we were late. And, oh God. In fact, I told them that I'll never come here again. And at that moment, when I was coming back, I wanted to get the contact of the CEO or whatever
The management.
place and tell the person that he has a good brand, but if he doesn't look at the people involved, you lose whatever he has built so far. Because I'm not going there again.
Right.
And word of mouth is very powerful.
That's
I
true.
can tell my friend, I can tell this person, and you are doomed.
And right
So,
now,
and that's what I wanted to.
yeah, even on
add
air
to
right
the
now.
branding
If you mention
aspect.
them.
Yes, you see, if I
Yes,
have mentioned the name,
exactly.
it's up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I think it
one
was the
thing-
same thing. I think it was the same thing Mr. Richardson was trying to allude to when he mentioned that we should do some people auditing, really.
Sure.
All right.
But one thing I would say to a business struggling is that they should be so focused on their financial planning practices.
Right.
And look, and especially in terms of their planning, in terms of how they track their expenses and their income, then how they manage their cash flows. That's so important.
Right.
One thing, especially those who are into keeping inventory of the things that they buy and resell, most of them have poor inventory management. They just go by. They don't know the trend, the terrain. They don't know how they use. They don't have any idea about the lead time when they place order, when the order will come in. So they're always managing inventory anyhow. And this, if you don't take time, you overinvest in your inventory, that you'll be cash strapped.
That's true.
So your financial planning in terms of your budgeting, in terms of tracking your expenditure, in terms of having emergency funds or for contingencies, these are key. Then your cash flow management too is very, very important. And you having a proper relationship with your customers for you to even be able to negotiate for proper terms and supply, in terms of supply, proper negotiation terms, very key. Your relationship with your creditors, very important. You meet your financial obligations where there are times that you can't pay. Negotiate with them for extension or renegotiation of the terms, so that you can fulfill your financial obligations. These are very key. Then adapt to the industry changes and the economic shifts and nuances that we are seeing around. Be abreast with the regulatory changes and everything that is there. And mostly, one of the things that you can do is to attend some of the industry events that you have. You engage with thought leaders. Sometimes conduct some strength, weaknesses, opportunity, threat analysis, what we normally call the SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
So that you can stay ahead of your people. So you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know the opportunities that are there because you have identified certain things through the industry events and the engagements you had with people. And I'm sure when you do that, you'll be able to stay competitive in your choosing industry or environment and adapt to those changing market conditions, and you will drive growth in your business.
Right. That's sandwich, because a lot of things in one. Thank you very much, Dr. Teddy Osei. Let me hear from Mr. Richardson.
Thank you. I think it's all been said, you know, and in this day and age, it's important that you have certain element of control over what it is you're trying to achieve and what it is you're trying to execute, and making sure that, for me, it's about decision making, because the terrain that we find ourselves in today, and the doc alluded to it, it's a very uncertain time. They have this expression they call VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Okay. And we are in those times. So nothing is fixed. So you have to be ready to sort of adjust. You have to be ready to chop and change. And the only way you can do that effectively is to be armed with sound information, sound insights, to have the right metrics, both lagging and leading. So lagging are the ones that tell you how you've done. Okay. Leading are the ones that could give you an indication of what to come. Right. You need both types of metrics, and then make those sound decisions as things go along. And you give yourself a better chance of success.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Teddy Osei, and also Mr. Elwood Richardson. Thank you very much.
You want to promote me?
Yeah, I want to
today.
promote you. You have to do a doctorate. All right. Thank you very much for your time and for all the insights.
You need to come and do the PhD.
Yeah, he has to come.
Doc, I'm coming to